Hello, friends. Let's make a key, Mrs. Key. Factor the given quadratic. So we've done a number of these. Hopefully you're figuring out the pattern. You multiply the first and last terms, sometimes called a and c. That's 49, in this case n squared. And then you want to add to negative 48. So I'm going to go ahead and write down things that multiply to 49, and I'm done because that's it. And I need to make 48. Well, I need to make negative 48. So let's go ahead and make that one a negative and put some n's here. If I were to multiply those two, I would get negative 49n squared. If I were to add those two, I would get negative 48n, I should have written. So now you just rewrite the initial problem. Don't change the first and last pieces, just change the middle pieces. Note that negative 48n becomes 1 minus 49 because 1 minus 49 is 48. Now we will factor by grouping. So look at these two and say, what can I take out from both of those? What can I take out? That answer is an n, of course. And you're left with 7n plus 1. If you're confused and you want to see if you did it correctly, double check. So take it, multiply. That's 7n squared. That's 1n. So we did that correctly. And I advise that go ahead and put 7n plus 1 here and ask yourself, how do I get from 1 to negative 7? Why multiply by negative 7? And let's double check that that works. If I do negative 7 times 7, that's negative 49n. If I do negative 7 times 1, that's negative 7, so I got what I came for. Now you are obligated to underline those and go, woo! Because those match. So then you write 7n plus 1 in one set, and then n minus 7 in the other. If this were equal to 0, we would then have to solve two linear equations, but there is no equals 0, and therefore we are dun done. For this next one, we are doing some division. Since we have the divided by here, that goes outside the division symbol. Write it as plus 6. And then we got 5b cubed plus 23b squared minus 34b, and then plus 47. Now I have a confession. When I did this sort of problem on the last review, I definitely wrote it wrong initially, and therefore that made my life more difficult. So try to make sure you're writing things correctly. And as I was just saying that, I was double checking to see if I got it correct. So the first question you ask yourself is, how do I get b to become 5b cubed? And hopefully you can realize that's multiplying by 5b squared. Then you have to distribute. Pew, pew. Let's get rid of both those pieces so they're not in my way. 5b squared times b is 5b cubed. 5b squared times 6 is 30b squared. Subtract down. So 23, the 5's go away, and then 23 minus 30 is negative 7b squared minus 34b. And now you ask yourself, dearest self, how do I get b to become 7b squared? Well, negative 7b squared. And hopefully you process, and you say, wait, if I put negative 7b there, then negative 7b times b will be negative 7b squared. Negative 7b times 6 will be negative 42. So that's the distributive. Pew, pew. So I'm going to have a negative 7b squared, and then minus 42b. Don't forget to subtract down. I'm going to go ahead and shrink things so I have a little more room here. And let's finish the subtraction. The 7's go away. Negative 34 minus negative 42 is 8. And then plus 47. And now you ask yourself, dearest self, how do I get b to become 8b? And I go ahead and multiply by 8. You take that 8, you distribute. Oh, get rid of this. And 8 times b is 8b. 8 times 6 is 48. Don't forget to subtract down. That gives you a negative 1. That's negative 1 over b plus 6. You're dividing by that b plus 6. You'll see things like that on Mathia, so be sure that you know how to write things correctly. You'll also see synthetic division on Mathia. If you want us to talk to you about that, we are happy to do so. Basically, it looks a lot like this, but things are very collapsed, and we ignore some of the coefficients. Not the coefficients, sorry, the letters. Determine A if x minus 4 is a factor. That sounds scary. There's a couple ways to do this. To me, one of the easier ways would be to say, If x minus 4 is a factor, that means 4 is a 0. So that means f of 4 equals 0. So let's go ahead and plug 4 in for x everywhere we see x. So 2 times 4 to the 4th, a times x cubed, 5 times 4 squared, 6 times 4 plus 8. That's going to equal 0. So I don't know about you, but I don't know what 4 to the 4th is, so I'm going to grab my handy-dandy calculator, and I'm going to say 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Oh, I did know that. And then times 2. So that is 512. And I guess I'll write this part down for you in case you are confused. And then 4 squared is 16. 16 times 5, I believe, is 80. And then we got 6 times 4, which is 24, plus 8. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm going to have 512 plus 80 minus 24 plus 8. So I got 576. So negative a, ooh, I wrote x cubed. That's not really supposed to be x cubed now, is it? That's supposed to be 4 cubed. So that's a 4 cubed. And that's 64, so that's 64. That'll make it easier. Equals 0 still, so that's 576 is what I got. Oops. And now I go ahead and I'm actually going to add the a stuff because I want everything to be positive because I'm just a positive kind of guy. So then I divide 576 by 64 and I get 9. So 9. And I wrote down 7, of course. So 9 should work. So if you put a 9 here, if you then put this function into Desmos, 4 should be a 0. A function and one of its factors is given. Use long division to determine the other. Okay. So this is the function. So this we have to put inside the division. And then the 5 minus x goes outside. So just like that previous division problem, you got to ask yourself, how do I make 5x into 70? Well, let's see. 5 times 16 was 80. We did that in the previous one. So I'm going to go with 14. So 14x. So 14 times 5 is 70, x squared. 14 times 2 is 28, so minus 28x. Be sure to subtract down. 70x squared minus 70x squared is 0. Negative 13 minus negative 28 is 15x minus 6. Now you ask yourself, how do I make 5x into 15x? And that's going to be hopefully a plus 5 is what I'll get there. And 5, not plus 5, what am I doing? Plus 3, silly. 3 times 5 is 15, that was a close one. 3 times 2 is, ooh, and when I subtract down, I get 0. So that's a yay, because that means that I did things correctly, because I better get 0 when I'm dividing by a factor. And so the other factor is right here. So 14x plus 3 is the other factor. If we had been asked for the 0, we would set that equal to 0 and be negative 3/14. And this quadratic here would have zeros at negative 3/14 and 2/5. But that is not what we are asked. We are simply asked for the factor, which is 14x plus 3. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that you are doing well, and if you have questions, let us know.